Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome home to Torah. Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash, I should have said, but nevertheless, a warm welcome home to Torah. We're in Parashat Terumah. I'm sorry I didn't have my Chumash open to Terumah. I'm going to open it now, and I want to mention that we encourage you to learn the original Hebrew. The big difference in learning in Hebrew, it's quantum leaps. It's just a whole different thing. So what we're encouraging you to do, remember, this is what we call the Yakar. However, he wrote other Svarim. The book we're using is the Giborim. I don't believe it's in print anymore. However, I just got an email today from Sefaria that they used, I think it was AI, but nevertheless, they used some kind of program to translate the entire Yakar into English. Even though ArtScroll has come out, but they haven't come out with the entire series, I have to look at this Sefaria and see the translation, how good it is. Okay, so in the meantime, we're in the Giborim, Parashat Terumah, and he begins with a medrash. Now, before I actually start, I just want to mention that you can get the Hebrew sheets by going down into the link below and finding the exact year, the title, and the sheets are actually on my website. That's number one. Number two, there's also previous shirim, which I encourage you to also look at, and that also you can find in the link below. And my father passed away recently, and we're learning for the Shloshim, for Mishnayot, and we're only just a few short from finishing the entire Shas of Mishnayot. So I'll also put a link below. I think there may be 5 tractates that we need to fill to make the siyum which we're making on Shushan Purim here in Yerushalayim. And let's begin. So the first thing the Yakar says is, he quotes the verse from Exodus chapter 25, verse 1. I'm sorry, it's really actually 25, verse 2. Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yichuli Terumah. Right? That speak to the children of Israel, and they shall take from me Terumah. These are the, we'll see, and Rashi mentions there are 3 different gifts. 2 of them are going to be, let's say, equal. They're all half a shekel. Everyone has to give the same amount, not more, not less. The third gift is from 13 different materials, and you can give as much or as little as you want for the building of what we're going to call the Mikdash, for the Tabernacle. Okay? And right away he says in the Midrash that, right, Hashem says, V'asuli Mikdash, that they shall make for me a Mikdash, a temple, a holy place. And the Midrash begins by saying, what did God say to the Jewish people? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. God said to the Jewish people, Atem Hatzaon, V'ani Haroeh. You, the Jewish people, you are my sheep, and I am your shepherd. How do we know this? So the first verse is in Yecheskel, Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 31. By the way, if you want to read this in English, it's in source number 2, Shmos Rabbah 34, number 3. So in Yecheskel, you'll see in source number 4. And you are my flocks, the flocks of my pasture, you are man. What does it mean you are man? It means you're not really an animal, okay? Like, even though we're compared to flocks because we are Hashem's flocks, nevertheless, we're not really animals, you are man. But here the pasuk is a proof text that Hashem is calling us, and we have this relationship as flocks, and his relationship to us is as a shepherd. Okay? But then Tzoni Tzon Meriti. Adamatem. Okay, the next thing is, what about him being a roeh? Very nice that Yecheskel shows us that we are considered God's flocks, But what about him being our shepherd? King David himself in chapter 80 of Psalms, verse 2, O shepherd of Israel, hearken. He's calling to Hashem. Roa Yisrael ha'azina. He's asking God to listen, and he's calling God the shepherd of Israel. And so when we said that in verse 8, V'asuli mikdash, that God tells us to make for him a tabernacle. By the way, just so you should know where that is, I think it's on the source sheet here. Yeah, look in source number 3, right? And they shall make for me a sanctuary. Okay, so that is verse 8. So that's the whole theme here. The theme is making this mikdash. And so why is that? So we just got done saying God is a shepherd and we are his flock. Asu dir leroa sheyavo v'yiroeh etechem. God wants us to build a dira, a dwelling place where he can act as a shepherd and he can shepherd us. Okay? What is another relationship? Ata kerem v'ani hashomer. God is calling us his vineyard, and he's calling himself the guardian of the vineyard. That's what it says in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 7. You'll see this in number 9 on the source sheet. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. Ki kerem Hashem tzivakaot beis Yisrael. The Jewish people are God's vineyard. Now, what about him being a shomer? Here's a famous verse in Psalms 121, verse 4. Okay, 121, verse 4, number 7 on the source sheet. Behold, the guardian of Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Hine lo yanum lo yishan, shomer Yisrael. God is the guardian of the Jewish people. Well, and then so basically, if you're going to make me a mikdash, asu sukkah lishmor lishomer. Make like a booth for the guard of the vineyard, shiavav yishmor etchem, so that he can come and guard you. And another type of relationship, atem benai va'ani av, that you, the Jewish people, are my children, and I, God, am the Father. How do we know this? It says in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 1, you'll see this in number 8 on the source sheet, you are the children of the Lord your God. Banim atem la'Hashem elkeichem. Okay, so God is calling us his children. And how do we know he's a father? Because it says in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 8, towards the end of the verse, for I have become a father to Israel. Ki hayiti liYisrael la'av. I have become a father to the Jewish people. So basically, by this idea of building this mikdash, building this dwelling place for Hashem, asu bayis la'av, you're making a house for the Father. Sheyavo v'yitzra beinechem. Okay, so you're building this house for the Father that he should come and dwell amongst you. And that's the bottom line of verse 8 of chapter 25, where it says, V'osuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham, that you should build for me, make for me, produce for me, construct for me this mikdash so I can dwell amongst you. Okay, so that is the midrash. Interestingly to note, although the Art Scroll Medrash brings out and highlights 3 major ideas. Just the idea that in the first case, God is considered to us as a shepherd. That's what we described him as. We also described him as a watchman, a guardian. Right? So you have the roeh, you have the shomer, and then you have the av, you have the father. Now, there should be a relationship between God and the Jewish people. So, as we know, the Jewish people are called God's flock. We're also called God's vineyard, and we're called God's children. And that lines up with the 3 descriptions we had described God as. But also notice that the house itself we will describe as a tent, even though it says dir, it's some kind of dwelling place. We'll see that as the Ohel Moed, which is one of the names of the Mikdash, of the Tabernacle, the Mishkan, as a booth, a sukkah. It really is a booth, a sukkah, and a bias, and a house. So those 3 different relationships between these three things all have meaning. Okay. Let's go now into the Yakar itself, in the Ir Giburim, as I mentioned. Omer HaKoitev. I think what he's saying is, the author of this Medrash, you know what he wrote? Lefi shebetavnit hamishkan v'kelav. I want you to learn a little bit of Hebrew. Tavnit is the pattern, the blueprint, right? It's what it's built upon, the thought, the blueprint of the Mishkan and its vessels, v'tziurehem, as well as, let's say, the illustrations, the way they're pictured, the way you see them, the illustration, harichu lama'anitam. It was all done, it was all for the sake of, and it goes at length. Many people read these Parshiot, 5 Parshiot, right, that all deal with the details of the Mishkan. And I've heard it said, I don't believe it, I believe them, that it sounds repetitive, that it sounds very boring. Well, let me tell you something. Just look at the Meforshim, look at the commentators. There's nothing boring. Every detail, as we will see, has depth and meaning, and you'll discover something new each time. So he begins by saying that it went at length for our sakes. Rov Mechabrim, so many have commentated, there are many commentators, Ad shekamat lo hanichu lanu makom lihitgader bo. They left almost no room to expound on or to define beyond what has already been described. V'darshu al kol kotes v'kotes tili halachos midrashos. There are just so many. There's a kotes is like a point, right? There's so many details, and well as tili, there's mounds and volumes of laws and expositions expounding on. Bitame hatziyurim, the reason for this, the illustration, right? We're going to describe the mikdash in certain descriptions. It's illustrated in a certain way. Ubemispar midotehem, as well as the number within the dimensions. We find out all of the different dimensions of the vessels and the rooms. It's just amazing, and there's so much depth. And remember that the Torah is an instruction manual for life. So if you're just reading it like, wow, it's this amount of amos and this length and this height, you're stuck in the trees. You're not seeing the whole forest. And we're going to get a bit of a picture of the whole forest tonight. So yes, there are so many details and lessons to be learned regarding the dimensions. Al ma hem meramizim, and what they represent or what they hint to. V'natati el libi, and the Yakar says, I have placed upon my heart. Lika klal echad biyadi, I have taken one particular general principle into my hands, min hamaforshim, amongst the different commentators, ulahoisif bo biur, and I'm going to explain, I'm going to take the time to add upon his explanation, kafi asher yeruuni mishmei marom. I think maybe this is more of a prayer that he's expecting God to show him something from heaven so that he could illustrate, so that he could explain it to us. Ubederach haklal das Rabbeinu Bechaya, and he's taking the general principle from Rabbeinu Bechaya that there are gimel chelkei mishkan. It's true. There are 3 divisions within the Mishkan, within the Tabernacle. Echad ruchani yoter michavero. Let me just, before I actually go into this, so you have the Holy of Holies, the most inner room that only the Kohen Gadol goes once a year in Yom Kippur. Okay, several times on Yom Kippur, but it's only one time, one day of the year. It's only one person. And that's going to be, he's going to describe that as the holiest, meaning it's the most spiritual place. Then you have the next room, the room you go into before the Holy of Holies, which is called the Holies. Okay, and it's like the Ulam, and you have certain vessels that are there. Okay, let's describe even the Holy of Holies. You have the Ark, and on top of the Ark you have the cherubim, the cherubim, these 2 little angelic, I'm going to call them statues, that are facing each other. They're sitting on top of the Ark, And inside the ark itself, you have Sefer Torah, maybe two you have. You have also Aaron's rod. You have a flask of man. You have the luchos. Which ones? Maybe there's two different Aaronot, but you have the broken ones. You have the non-broken ones. This is all inside of the Holy Ark. And so and outside in the first room that you come to, that's where you're going to have three other vessels. You have the menorah, you have the table, the show tables, the show breads are on the table, and you have the Mizbeach Torres, the incense altar. So you have three vessels in the first room, and then in the Holy of Holies, you only have the Holy Ark. So he says, each one of these rooms, so also you have the Chatzer, the outer courtyard. So that's the three divisions. The outer courtyard, which is where you first enter, right, into what we'll call the Holy, it's the sanctuary itself, but then you go into the first room, that's the Holies, and then you go into the Holy of Holies. So he said that each one is more holy or more spiritual than the other, and they parallel the three worlds. Okay, what are the three worlds? We discussed this last week or the week before. This idea that the Elyon, that's where the angels, remember Hashem is above everything. But in the three worlds that were created, you have the angelic world, that's the highest world. Then you have the middle world, which is the celestial spheres, the sun, the moon, the stars. And then you have the lower world, which is the world we're in. And he's claiming that, based on Rabbeinu Bechaya, that each one is more spiritual than the next, and the way we just described it is they're parallel to the three worlds. And not only that, they also parallel, at least what we're describing now, we know there's 5 levels of the soul. We're only dealing with the 3 lower levels, and that is the nefesh, which is the lowest level, it's in the blood. Then you have the ruach, which is kind of like in the spirit and of the air. And then you have the neshama, which is probably and most likely mostly around the brain and the head area. So that's what he's saying, that this is like the whole premise. His whole thesis is going to be based on Rabbeinu Bechaya, that there are 3 portions of the mikdash or the mishkan. They parallel the 3 worlds, and they parallel the 3 parts of the nefesh of the soul of a man. Ki hachelek harishon, he claims, that very first, meaning the deepest, most inner room, chelek harishon shebamishkan lifnim mehaparochet. It's on the inside of the veil, right? It's on the other side of the curtain. Hayoter ruchani shesham ha'aharon va'luchos v'hakruvim. So it's more spiritual. Because what do you have inside of that room? The Holy of Holies. You have the Ark, you have the tablets, and you have the cherubs. Shem kelim hapnimim ne'alamim. That those vessels are on the most inner and hidden room. Heim keneged ha'olam me'elyon. And they're parallel to the highest world. And what is that parallel in terms of man? That's keneged harosh, the actual head, which we said is the highest level, the nefesh, sheba adam, that's in man, shesham mishkan hachachma, that's where wisdom resides, and that is ruchani yoter me'acherim. That's even more spiritual than the other 2 levels of your soul, and it's the holiest place of all. Just you should know, in terms of like laws, it says when a Jew gets in the bathroom and uses the shower, he should first wash his head. It's the king of all the limbs. Of course, that's the one is most sensitive. Okay, then you have your body. You start with the right side, and then you wash the left side, and then the lower extremities, your right side, and then your left side. When you put on your clothes, you first put on your right arm, or you put your arm through the right sleeve. Same thing when you put on your pants, and same thing when you put on your socks. Okay, shoes we'll talk about another time. Actually, it's the same thing, but times of tying depends if you're lefty or righty. Okay, so let's continue on. That second portion, the second division of the room, it's michutz leparochet. It's on the other side, right? It's on the holy side, not on the Holy of Holies, but on the outside of the curtain, and that's called the Ohel Moed. Remember the term Ohel. V'sham hashulchan hamenorah v'mizbeach ketoris. So we have there the table, the showbreads, you have the menorah, the candelabra, and you have the altar for the incense. And they're kelim pnimim hanichbadim. These are vessels that are honorable or treasured. It's true. Amnam lo kirishonim, but they're not like what we said was on the Holy of Holies. It's not like the Ark and the Luchos and the Chruvim. Why? Heim keneged olam galgalim ukenegdem ba'adam halev. 1 second, let's just slow down. So this middle room, which has these three vessels, and we said we're going to say it's keneged, it's parallel to the torso, which really contains the heart. So this is parallel to that middle celestial spheres world. Okay, the sun, the moon, and the stars is going to be parallel to that, and that's going to be parallel to the heart of man. The heart of man is Evarim hapenimim shekol achiyus toilebo. That this is one of the most innermost organs that life itself is dependent upon. Chelek hashlishi Chatzer Mishkan. The outer, the third portion of the tabernacle is the Chatzer, is the outer courtyard. Ubohaya mizbeach ha'oila l'makrive ha'korban. And in that courtyard, that's where you have the altar where the korbanos, where the offerings are sacrificed. Where it's really hard to translate korban as sacrifice. It's an offering. That's what it is. But that offering, I understand they call it a sacrifice because it's diminished, right? It's diminished. And that's what we're going to talk about. This idea of the outer courtyard is where the diminishing is happening, like the korbanos. V'sham bale chayim shemekablim hefsid. That's where life, the bale chayim, the things that are alive, they're accepting upon themselves basically the diminution, that the hefsid, there's going to be a loss. That's what life is. The moment you're born, you're already, I don't mean to be so negative, it's not negative, but that is the direction we're going in. V'keneged olam hashefel. This is going to be parallel to the lowest worlds, the world we're in. V'bale havaya. That's the world of existence. V'hefsid, as well as loss. Ukenegdam ba'adam ateva. And this is parallel to the nature of man. Man is, the real nature of man, I should say, the physical nature of man. It's not in the head, right? That's where the wisdom is. Then you have the heart, but below the belly button, where the legs are, and the genitals, the sexual organs. That's where the taivas, that's where the desires, we'll see soon, are in man. And he says, "V'hu mehatibur v'lamata." We're talking about from the belly button, the navel downwards. That's the olam hashefel in man. The nature of man rests there. V'hu, turn the page. Reshit hefsed aguf. This is where maybe you can translate it as this is the least important, but it's basically the place where the beginning of the decreasing of the body. There's a diminishing of the body. That's where it starts, from the belly button down. Ad kan hatza'at harav b'chiburo. Up until now, this has all been basically a summary of Rabbeinu Bechaya. Now he begins with a little introduction by saying, I got to speak up. All these illustrations are nice, but I want to give you the depth. I want to give you some real meaning behind everything. Al karchenu anu tzrichim lahoisif birolav. We're forced. It's by necessity. We must add to this previous explanation. Ki nishar makam lebali adin lichloch al divarav. Because there are going to be people that are going to speak up and argue on what the Rabbeinu Bechai just said, and I'm telling you, he's right. I want to give more depth, and they're going to say, Mahu hatachlis magia me'elu etzurim. They're going to speak up and they're going to say, what exactly is the purpose that we're supposed to grasp and understand from these illustrations of the Mikdash? It's very nice that you're giving us all of these hints to the different things, but what's the tachlis? Right? There still remains a place for somebody to come and make a claim against the words of Rabbeinu Bechaya, and to say, this is where I should actually start maybe, and to say, what exactly is the purpose that we're supposed to grasp from all of these illustrations and descriptions? It's very nice that you describe them, but what is the purpose? That it's actually impossible, or absolutely impossible, to say that it's the actual illustration and discussion regarding it. That's the whole purpose. No. That you're going to claim that that's the benefit of grasping these, illustrations, the way you picture things. Not just the picture. It has to become practical. And he's going to describe that practicality right now. The very purpose of man, shenivra, that was created, that's us. Ba'avuro hi ha-Torah mitzvahs. You know why we were created? On account of Torah and mitzvahs, which really means to apply the instructions that God gave us. Follow the directions, follow the instructions, which is the Torah and its commandments. Ubederek zeh yevul kol haramazim b'Torah, and the Yakar, I'm underlining it. In this fashion, the Yakar is basically saying all of the hints that are within the Torah, al inyan, are all regarding hamasa asher yasa adam v'chai behem. It's all directing how a man should act, the actions what he should do and live through them. Right? That's a pasuk. Ki hamasa hi tachlis. It's the action that is the prime goal. Right? We have this huge discussion in the Gemara. What's greater, the learning or the doing? Like, what are you doing it for? The whole learning anyways in order to do. Right? So ultimately it's really the doing, but if you don't learn, you don't know what you're doing. First of all, you don't even know what to do, and you don't know why you're doing it. So the point of learning is really in order to fulfill. Okay, so that's the bottom line. Ki hamasa hi tachlis. It's really about the actions that we're going to derive from every little detail. V'tziurim elu le'ezah masa yivu adam. And all the illustrations and descriptions are basically to tell you how to do what it is you're going to do. Whatever a person is going to end up doing, it's all coming from the descriptions. The descriptions, these pretty books, are not the ultimate goal. It's what you derive from it. Al kein nira lanu. Therefore, it seems to us, lahoisif al divorav ulavarer hatachlis magia melatzurim. Therefore, he feels very strong that we must add, or let's say clarify his words. What is the purpose that we are supposed to derive from all of these different illustrations? So he says, Halohu lilamed b'nei Yehuda keshet. Now this is actually a pasuk. I didn't write it down in the source sheet, but it's 2 Samuel chapter 1 verse 18, or maybe I did. If someone sees it, let me know. And basically this is Yehonatan and Saul are dead, and the Jewish people should not lose faith. They're basically, and this is interesting, we're sitting on the edge of the Iranian attack, whether that's us, America, or them attacking us. But basically, it says the Jewish people have to learn war, right? Lame b'nei Yehuda keshetu milchama. But what is the war? The war is the milchama satorah. V'hamaskilim yavinu. The ultimate war is the war over the Torah, the one you have to fight for, the one you have to die in the tent for, the one that you have to sweat, blood, sweat, and tears, lose sleep over. And those who are enlightened will understand all these hints. Hamaskilim yavinu ramazim, the inyan hapanimi, and the depth, the real inside hints. the Inyan hapanimi hanirmaz la'adam, that's all hinting to a person, me'elo hatziurim, through the illustrations, through the descriptions of the Mishkan, ve'es hamasa asher ya'aseh, and the actions that one should perform, shabam yiskaimo kol gimel olomos, that only through the actions that we do, that's how we maintain and keep the world going. All three worlds, well, even the angelic world, we keep the angels going. We keep the celestial spheres are under us. We're not under them. And this lower world, it depends on us. And the v'gam ha'olam hakaton biklalo shu adam, as well as the human, we'll call it the microcosm. There's the macrocosm, which is the universe, and then we have the microcosm, which is each individual is a universe, and everything about the description of the Mishkan is a lesson for us because it's also a micro of the universe. Okay, why? We could talk about that another time. I can just give you a quick snippet. The idea is that God spoke and the world came into being, and he ceased on Shabbat. He stopped creating on Shabbat. We call it Maleket Makshavas. These are like the highest level thoughts. Well, guess what? In this world, in this lower world, the highest level thoughts went into building such a thing, such a structure as the Mishkan, and that's how we learn the laws of Shabbat. How do you know, right? It could be subjective. Don't work. Well, what if I like doing this? So I can do it and you can't? It's objective. The objective laws of what we do or don't do on Shabbat, in terms of work, is all based on the actual construction of the Beis Hamikdash, or the Mishkan itself. And it's a microcosm, it's a creation that we created with, of course, God's help, God's direction, God's command, in order to learn so many things. That's just like what do you call it? Scratching the edge here. That what I just told you about the laws of Shabbos, what you can and cannot do, is all related to whatever was used, or any act that's similar to what was used in building the Mishkan. That is what is forbidden on Shabbat. Otherwise, think about it. The Torah says it's a death penalty. Well, I could just go in front of the base and says, for me, it wasn't work. Right? I hear these people who are, whoever they are, they don't know anything about Judaism or about Shabbos, and says don't work, so they don't work, right? And then they say, but I'm doing this, it's not work. The Torah says you're going to be warned, they're going to put you to death. It has to be objective, and those objective rules are learned from the building, the instructions of the building of the Mishkan. The auto teda v'taskil memutza davar shedrashu chazal. Now you shall know and you shall become enlightened and wise from what is derived, what comes out, what results from the rabbi's discussion in Midrash Rabbah, Bamidbar Rabbah 12:10. It says over there, I think on the source sheet, you see it? It is number 11 on the source sheet. Okay, so it's not so clear in the English, but we'll read it. Es tavnit hamishkan, ves tavnit kol kelav. Regarding these things, there's a pasuk, right? Regarding the structure, the pattern, the blueprint of the Mishkan, and according to the pattern or the blueprint of all the vessels. That's what the verse says. Melamed sharoa kadosh baruch hu leMoshe. This teaches us that God actually showed Moshe, and this is like a very cryptic idea. Eish chora, eish levana, eish yeruka, eish aduma. Somehow, and we're going to find out. We're going to discuss this. God showed Moses when he instructed him how to build the Mishkan and its vessels. He showed to him 4 different kinds of fire that was black, fire that was white, fire that was green, and fire that was red. And God said to him, V'amarlo, kekol asher ani mareh otcha ta'aseh. According to everything that I have shown you, this is how you should do it. So God showed him. What did Moses understand from God showing him these 4 kinds of fires? So we're going to delve into it. Yesh lehit bonein bekan. One should really carefully examine right now what we're going to talk about. Heichan metzinu she'asa Moshe afilu tavni daled eshot elu shehizkir. How do we find, how's it possible? From where do we know that Moses made the Mishkan according to these 4 kinds of fires that God instructed him or showed him? What does that mean? Nira shu ramaz el mashis karnu. This is actually a hint, right? He was showing him that this is a hint to what we already mentioned, that the Mishkan itself, biklalo doime letavni to Adam, that the structure of the Mishkan is similar, is parallel to the structure of man. Amazing. And not only that, it's a benui. What is man? Man is built upon by 4 elements, right? What are the elements? You have air, earth, wind, and fire. I said water. You have water, you have earth, you have wind, and you have fire. 4 yesodot. That man is bunoi al dalid yesodos. And not only that, within man there are dalid maros sheba'adam. Mar shchora, mar adoma, mar yeruka, and mar levana. From what I understand, these are the fluids that are within man. We have black fluids, we have red fluids, green fluids, and white fluids. What they all represent, I don't know, but they're bile, right? Things that, help you digest and other things. Could be reproductive things. But Shemeihem bo'esh hativoni, with the aleph vav vav, from the word taiva, that within this bodily fluids, which man is made from, there is a fire of desire that's boer ba'adam. Okay, so within them, I'll just read again. Shemehem bo'esh hatavoni haboer ba'adam. There is a fire of desire that's burning within man. Ukenegdam husma ba'adam shlosha mitzvahs keneged daled eshos elu. And God, in His wisdom, He placed upon man, He gave man 3 mitzvahs, 3 important mitzvahs that are going to parallel, they're going to go against the 4 types of fire that are burning within man, his burning desires. And not only that, parallel to those are the 3 worlds that we mentioned. Now he says, he wants you to open your eyes, right? Be awoke, awaken yourself, look. He wants you to examine, look at the Parsha. Shelo nase zer ki'im la'aron u'l'shochan u'l'mizbeach. That there are only 3 vessels in the entire Mishkan that has a type of a crown. And this crown is on the aron, it's on the table, and it's on the incense altar. And Chazal tell us in Midrash Rabbah 34:2, you'll find, where? 12. Number 12. Yeah. Okay. It says over there, Shromas legimel ksarim shebehem Yisrael, muhtarim keser Torah, shu hazer hanaseh la'aron. That there are these 3 crowns that the Jewish people have been crowned with. So the 3 instruments, the 3 vessels that are in the temple, in the tabernacle, they represent different things that the Jewish people have been crowned with. Okay? So the first thing is the Keser Torah, the crown of Torah. And that's the crown that's on the Holy Ark. There's also a Keser Kahuna, there's a crown of priesthood. And where is that? Where you would expect it to be. It's the crown that's on the incense altar, which is in the room that only Kohanim can go into. Keser Malchus. Now, even though the Shulchan has, right, and that's going to represent kingship. Keser Malchus is the zar that's made on the Shulchan. That's also in a place that only Kohanim can go. However, what is it about a Shulchan of bread that represents kingship? We'll see in a second. See, a Shulchan remez l'shulchanam shel malachim. The whole idea of a table itself represents the tables of kings. We're going to see that the tables of, and we're all kings, right? We all have a table, and we have guests, and we feed poor people off our tables. We're going to see the relationship between becoming a king and having the kingship is in your ability to provide for others, is in your ability to give tzedakah and charity. Now let me just stop for a second, because we have this idea that Mashiach is going to be, the Messiah, going to be born in Bethlehem, a little town outside of Jerusalem, just 5 kilometers to my right. Isn't that true? Yes and no. What it means is, drum roll please, that Dovid HaMelech was born in Bethlehem. He's the one where Mashiach is going to come from. Mashiach doesn't have to be born from the city of Bethlehem. Mashiach has to be born from the seed of a male that comes from Dovid HaMelech. And we already know some of these false messiahs do not have the seed of the male that come from Dovid HaMelech. So when it says, now why Bethlehem? Why does the king has to come from Bethlehem? Because in Hebrew, Beit Lechem, the house of bread. Bread is sustenance. Bread is parnasa. Bread is that which the king is obligated to make sure that everyone has 2 chickens in every pot. Right? You heard that expression. Right? A car in every garage. 2 garages in every house. Right? The king is supposed to, let's say, supply security and parnasa, sustenance. Okay, so that's why the Shulchan represents kingship. As it says here, that the Shulchan is Ramaz, the Shulchanam Shel Malachim. V'yomer od, and not only that, even the word Shulchan is a language, it's hinted at, L'hiparnes re'evim mishulchano, to provide to the poor people from your table. And that's what kingship is going to be about. There's a verse in Koheles, Ecclesiastes, verse 11:1. It's number 13 on the source sheet. Send forth your bread upon the surface of the waters, for after many days you will find it. Now just think about it a second. You're not going to find, you put bread on the water, it's gone. First of all, that's the whole idea. If you give bread and not expect anything in return, then you will find it. You'll have blessing. Look at Rashi. Do goodness and kindness to a person about whom your heart tells you that you will never see again, like a person who cast his food upon the surface of the water, not expecting it. But after many days you will find it, Rashi says. Days will yet come and you will receive your reward. Think about what happened to Jethro. What was it said about Jethro? Jethro, the women, the daughters, they found this man, this Egyptian, and Jethro said, call him that he should eat bread. Think about what Jethro did. He wanted bread to go to this, poor starving man. So he thought that Moses was an Egyptian and that he would never see him again. In other words, there was nothing, no agendas. So what was his end? What was Jethro's end? He became the son-in-law, and he reigned over Israel, and brought him under the wings of the Shekhinah. Moses brought Yisro and his sons and grandsons merited to be on the Sanhedrin. Jethro's sons, grandsons merited to be on the Sanhedrin. They became malachim. They became like kings, if you understand what I'm saying. So that's the last verse we read. Sholach lachmecha al pnei hamayim. And then v'chein pirush Rabbeinu Bechaya b'parsha zu. Rabbeinu Bechaya also explains And in this parsha, Biur Oid Shlakach Amru Chazal. Chazal tell us in Gemara Brachos 54b, number 15 on the source sheet, that if someone extends three things, there's so much blessings, right? So one is if you extend your table, Hamarich al Shulchano Ma'arichim Ko Lo Yamav V'Shanotav. What does it mean if you extend your table? Your life, you'll have a long life. It's not rushing, having guests, making sure they're properly fed, right? Not just rushing them out, allowing poor people to come to your table. That's what it means. And we have this concept, I don't know if I brought it down, but it's in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 2. Tzedakah tatzil mimalves, that charity saves you from death. Do you understand? You want to be saved? You want to be saved? Who doesn't want to be saved? Charity. Get it? Charity will save you from death. V'chein metzinu shedur zacha leketer machus. Also, any generation that generation is they're somehow meriting to have a king, which is what we're all looking for Mashiach. We want Mashiach. You know how we're going to merit him? Oiches b'midas hatzedakah, by seizing that character trait of tzedakah, as it is brought down in 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 15. And I think it's 8:15, number 16 on the source sheet. It says, and David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and charity for all his people. He reigned because he administered justice and charity. Like even as a judge, the whole idea of tzedek, righteousness, putting back the money to where it belongs, that's an act of charity. Look what Rashi says regarding that. David administered justice, and Yoav, the son of Zeruiah, was over the host. Look at Rashi. David caused Yoav to be successful over the host, meaning over the army, because he executed justice and charity. It was because of David doing the right thing that he won the wars. And Yoav caused David to execute justice and charity because he would judge, and Yoav would enforce and chastise for David. And also, because Yoav was engaged in the battles, David was not busied with them, and he was left free to judge righteously. So there's a tie-in. Yeah, we have this big argument in Israel. Should yeshiva students be exempt from the army? Well, we've discussed this before. Certainly, those who are sitting and learning should definitely be exempt from the army. Those who are not learning, that's a whole other story. We're talking about those who are upholding the Torah and giving the power and the koach to the army. By the way, I served. Okay, that's not even for now. Let's go on. That's the last thing we read. The Im Kain, hu me'achar sheklal habinyan shel mishkan hoya ha'ikar gimel elu baram v'shulchan ubimizbeach shrei lo nase zer ke'im legimel elu. Just keep in mind this whole idea. After the fact, the general idea of the building, sheklal habinyan, of the Mishkan, the general idea of the Mishkan, the building of it, we said includes these three different rooms or three different divisions, and the main thing, the main three vessels, right, is the Aron, the Shulchan, and the altar, and those three vessels have crowns around them. Me'atat say Tamar. Now, if you want to go out and say the following. Shema shenase tavni ta mishkan ketavni to gimel olamos uketavni to adam begimel chelkav. That all these things are related, right? You have the pattern, the illustration, the pattern, the blueprint of the Mishkan is just like the pattern of the three worlds, and that's just like the pattern of the human being with his three different parts. All of it hints lahachtir es Yisrael begim ksarim. It all hints to the idea that the Jewish people are crowned with these three crowns. And these three crowns are Ma'amidim Yesoida Olam Elyonim V'Taktonim, that by the Jewish people meriting these three crowns, we're keeping alive the entire world. the above, the world in the heavens, the world below, and everything in between. The Gam ha'adam hu olam katon. Even a human being is a small world. The al gimel dvarim ha'olam oimed al, it says in Pirkei Avot. On the source sheet, you'll see this, number 17. Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, Mishnah 2. On three things, ha'olam oimed. The world stands. Without any of these things, the world would fall apart. Al Torah, on the Torah itself, it's one of the pillars. On avodah, avodah means service, and gemilos chasadim, which is kind acts. Kvar skarnu, hatza'at ha'inyan. So he says, we already discussed this idea already. Okay. Lefi, shekan mekomo nitzia ha'inyan kan biktav hanishtabin. That now is the place to present this idea, written as it's written. Amnam b'derek ketzara, ki yarich hasipur. Not sure what this phrase means. He says, however, on the other hand, in a summary version or a short version, because one could go at length, yarich hasipur, ukvar nizkar, hakol sham. And we already mentioned everything there, that the Torah, Shahatorah hi keneged olam elyon, that the Torah, which is the seat of wisdom, and that's in the Holy of Holies, in the Ark, that represents or is parallel to the upper world, the world of angels. And what's there? That's keneged harosh sheba'adam. That's parallel to the head of man. Shemisham haseichel yini. That's where the intellect resides. That, just an idea, the difference between Maimonides, that's the Rambam, and the Yakar's Rabbi, the Maharal of Prague. When they use the word seichel, they use it in very disparate ways, very, very different ways. The Rambam uses the word seichel as intellect. That's the highest level, according to the Rambam. The highest level is to have this intellect that is so in tune with God. Whereas the Maharal explains the word seichel as spirit, spiritual. Well, I see no conflict. I think that really they're saying the same thing, right? They say that the Rambam was a more rationalist and the Maharal was a more mystic. I also don't agree. I think they were both very rational and mystical at the same time. But okay, so here we're using the word haseichel yuni, that the head of man, it's from there that the intellect or the spirit is let's say the third eye, that spiritual eye. It has a deep mind of intelligence. So that's the head, that's the ark, that's the Holy of Holies, that is the upper world of angels. What about tefillah? Tefillah keneged agagalim. This idea of prayer, the heart, that's going to be parallel to the middle world of celestial spheres, the sun, moon, the stars. Sh'af he misaprim kavod eel. They also are telling over the glory of God. The keneged alev. Right, just look at the stars, and the moon. There's so much, perfection in everything. So they're telling over the glory of God, and that's going to be parallel to the heart of man. It says in Chazal, in Gemara Tainis, based on the verse in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 13, which you'll find on number 19 on the source sheet. Right? It says, "Ula'avdo b'chol levavchem," and you're going to serve God with all your hearts. Well, what is this? How do you serve God with your heart? Eza avoda, the Gemara asked, Shebelev, what is this service of the heart? This is tefillah. This is prayer. Okay, so the middle, you have the top, which is Torah, let's say the head, you have the middle, which is the heart, which is prayer, and then you have the outer courtyard, which is the lowest world, and he's going to claim this is the tzedakah. The lowest world takes place because that's where you have people in need. In the upper, there's no blemishes in the upper world. There's almost no blemishes in the middle world. The blemish, the chaser, right? We said it's chaser, it's a hefsid. There's a lacking, only takes place in this lowest world. And that's when tzedakah is necessary. V'hatzedakah keneged olam hashefel. The idea of tzedakah is parallel only to this lower world. Ukeneged hateva sheba'adam mekabel hefsid v'temura. That's going to be parallel within the nature of man, who's basically in this lower world. It's accepting the fact that there's a hefsid, there's going to be a loss. Keep tzedakah nikar there. When you give tzedakah, tzedakah is only given when you recognize the lack. There's a lack of balei chayim, of creatures. V'shiflotan sha'echad nitzrak l'chavero. And this lowliness, this lowliness where one requires his friend. You need other people in this world. That's why tzedakah is performed in this world. Then he says, "V'ani chashuv kamet." This is a concept that a poor person in Chazal is considered like a dead person. Keneged hateva sheba adam shu met b'teva eino chai. Then this parallels like the nature of man. The nature of man, the minute we're born, we're already on our way toward death, right? We're already losing, we're already lacking. And therefore, the nature of man is like he's not chai, ela b'mikra v'hu ba'alei havaya v'hafsid. All he really is in the world of existence, which is constantly going down. What do we call the soul of a man in this world? A yeled miskain, a poor child. That's what the soul is. Im kain kamo kain yoshvei choshek v'tzamavis ba'olam hatamur hazeh kalim v'nifsadim. That you're dwelling, these are people, we're dwelling in darkness, in the valley of the shadow of death, in this world. And it's just being, basically, it's exchanged for kalim v'nifsadim. I will translate as disintegration and loss. Now, we're not going to end on a bad note. This is just the outline. Now we're going to understand something. I would just want to also mention that the Yakar has a 15-page essay. We're only going into 2 pages. Okay, maybe 1.5, 2.5 pages. This is the last paragraph that we'll discuss until the next year. Gimel elu keneged gimel chalche mishkan shizkarnu. That everything we discussed, these 3 ideas, are parallel. The Torah, Voda, and Gemilas Chasadim. They parallel the 3 divisions within the Mishkan. Chelik Panimi, that innermost room, the Holy of Holies, Shabo Aaron, where the Aaron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, Ramaz Lekeser Torah, we already said that hints to the crown of Torah. It has a crown. Nimshechet min harosh, and that extends from the head. That's where the head is. It's like a illustration, right, of the human body is similar to the Mishkan. Ubo yiskaima olam elyon, and that's how the upper world is able to sustain itself. Kasher skarnu zeh, like we already discussed prior. Chelik hasheni, the middle room, suppose Shum Mizbeach Kator. That's where you have the incense altar. That's Ramaz La'avoda. That's going to hint to the service. The Nimshachas Min Halev, which extends and protrudes from the heart. Kniskar V'hi Keneged Olam HaGagalim. And that is parallel to all of the, interesting, like the whole circulatory, the circulation of the stars and the moons. They're going around. We asked somebody recently how, like if the heart is pumping, how long does it take for the blood to circulate through the entire body? It's circulation. It's constantly going around. It's less than a minute. I mean, look, I don't know if you believe all the scientists, but that's what they claim. Okay. Chelik Shlishi is the Chatzer. And the third portion, we said, is the outer courtyard of the Mishkan, and that's where the Mizbech HaOila, where the altar, where the sacrifices are burnt. V'sham ba'alei chayim mekablim hefsid. And that's where loss of life takes place. Remez l'tzedakah. This hints to the idea of charity. Shebo nikr hesed ba'alei chayim. This is only through knowing that the other person is lacking would you be interested or even instructed to give tzedakah. Bizman shenitztarchu lezuzeh. That's when each person requires the help of another. Amnam hamifarnaso, the one who is supplying, right, the charity, harekilu hikrif korban al mizbeach ha'oila. It's as if, think about it, when you're giving tzedakah, and it's related to the outer courtyard where the korbanos are, that it's as if you're giving a korban, because it's a loss, it's a hefsid, right? You're giving your money, your pocket's becoming smaller, your bank account is becoming smaller. Wait to hear this. It says in Gemara Sota, Gedoylet tzedakah min korbanos. I actually want to read that Gemara because it's in Sukkah 29b. I think it has other lessons to be taught. It's number 20 on the source sheet. Rabbi Elazar said, one who performs acts of charity is greater than the one who sacrifices any type of offerings. There's a pasuk, there's a verse in Proverbs 21:3. It says, to perform charity and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than an offering. Do you hear this? So all these different religions that discuss korbanos and sacrifice and all that, it's really ultimately about acts of charity are greater than any type of sacrifice that could be made. I want to continue in the same Gemara, Sukkah 49b. Rabbi Elazar said, he also said, acts of kindness, meaning assisting someone in need, are greater than charity. It says in Hosea 10 verse 12, sow to yourselves according to charity and reap according to kindness. What does this mean? If a person sows, right, farmer, it is uncertain whether he will eat or whether he will not eat, since much can go wrong with the seed before the seed becomes food, right? You can have a cold spell, you can have a flood, you can have a drought. However, if a person reaps, he certainly eats. In this verse, so we said, if you give charity, you will certainly reap. That's what it says. Charity is likened to sowing, while acts of kindness are likened to reaping. I'm going to finish this last paragraph off. And so we say like that. Okay, we read the two verses, but there is another verse. Besides Proverbs 21:3, which we said, performing charity and justice is preferred by God than to sacrifice. And also in Isaiah chapter 33, verses 15 and 16, he takes the first few words of 15 and the other few words from 16, and holek tzedachas hu maromim yishkon, basically putting it together. He who walks righteously with tzedakah, then he will dwell on high. Who doesn't want to dwell on high? All you have to do is remember not just to give tzedakah, but also to console. When we said that if you give a coin to a poor person, you'll be blessed with 6 blessings. But if you speak to them and you console them and you uplift their spirits, you get an additional 11 blessings, which altogether is 17. The word tov, the word good, is the gematria 17. So just think about what you're doing. Zo lashon oila, this idea of maromim, that you'll be elevated, it's an idea of being raised up. By the way, that's exactly what the korbanos are called. The ola is a entirely raised offering. Total hefsid. It goes total loss. So therefore, what do we understand? The purpose of man, he's able to reach or grasp from the illustrations of this building, of this construct of the Mishkan, who betavnit adam, he's understanding man, the construction of man, the building of man, the formation, the blueprint of man. It's a remez la adam shiabana habayas anushi begimli yisayde olam elu. It all hints how a man should build his own personal house with those three fundamental ideas, which we said the world stands on: Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim. This was a lot. We're really in the middle of the paragraph, but we're going to stop here. This is just the first page and a half, 2 pages of a 15-page essay. Bezrat Hashem, next year we'll continue, but I hope this was instructive. We really have to get into the nitty-gritty of what each thing of the temple represents, what it instructs us to do. The word Torah is from Hora'ah, instructions. It means instructions. It means light. It has many meanings. It's the instructions. It's the light. And so we invite you to continue to learn with us. If you want to receive the English source sheet, send me an email, and we'll add you to the list. In the meantime, I wish everyone a good Shabbos and a great life. And we'll see you next week.